Bhante. I will ask for forgiveness and after that precepts. Okas vandami bhante dvaratena katam sabam aparadam khamatu me bhante. Dutiyamti okas vandami bhante dvaratena katam sabam aparadam khamatu me bhante. Tatyamti okas vandami bhante dvaratena katam sabam aparadam kamatu me bhante. Now I will ask for Ashtashil Uposat. Okas aham bhante te saranena saha uposat ashtashilang dhammang yachami anugaham katva shilang detame bhante. Dutiyamti okas aham bhante Saranena sa uposata ashtashilam dhammang yachami anugaham katva shilam detame bhante. Tatyamti okas aham bhante Saranena sa uposata ashtashilam dhammang yachami anugaham katva shilam detame bhante.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sarana kamanang nititang.
Bhante.
Anatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adhinadhana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kami brahmacharya veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Brahmacharya cha viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Suramiraya maja pamadatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Surameraya Majjapamadatthana Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami.
Vikala Bhojana Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami.
Vikala Bhojana Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami.
Nacha Gita Vadita Visukhadasana Mala Kantha Vilepana Dharana Mandhana Vipusana Thana Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami.
Nacha Gita Vadita Visukha Dasana Mala Gandha Vilepana Dharana Mandana Vibhusana Thana Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami.
Ucca Sayana Mahasayana Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami.
Uccasena Mahasena Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami.
Imani Atta Sikkhapadhani Silena Sukating Yanti Silena Bhoga Sampadha Silena Nibhuting Yanti Tasama Silang Visothaye.
Bhante sadhu sadhu sadhu.
Bhante, I'm going to ask the question now.
Yes.
Uh, Bhante, the first question is, to be a stream enterer, if I am not wrong, we have to get rid of rites and rituals, doubts in the Dhamma, and realization of anata. Is a lighting of a candle offering to other than the Buddha, say to departed relative, considered as a rituals?
No, the Sangyochana, or the fetter, which is abandoned by the stream enterer, is not the participation in ceremonies or the performance of rituals per se. It is the wrong understanding of them, the attachment to them, in particular the idea that there is purification of mind through ritual. If ritual is understood correctly, it can in fact be a very useful part of Dhamma practice, because ritual resonates with something deep within us. It works on the non-intellectual, on the emotional level. So ritual can be designed in such a way as to promote kusala dhammas, wholesome emotions, which can then contribute to our practice. The Buddha was critical of the beliefs in India at that time, which of course in many cases survive to the present day, where too much weight is given to ritual, and it is seen as having some inevitable purifying effect on the mind. From Buddhist point of view, it has an emotional impact which can be used as a tool, but that it is not inherent in the ritual itself. If the people, if anybody is performing a ritual with wrong view or with out of superstition, then obviously it will not have a purifying effect. The stream enterer understands the Dhamma profoundly and understands the way in which akusala dhammas are abandoned, the way in which kusala dhammas are cultivated, and the way in which the mind is purified. And through that clear understanding, the wrong idea and the wrong views that lead to attachment to rites and rituals are abandoned. it is also worth contemplating that this does not just refer to the rites and rituals that one might see in temples, but it also can be extended to attachment to a meditation object, for instance, or a particular way of doing things, or believing that one becomes pure through certain ascetic practices, or one becomes pure through being vegetarian, for instance. So there are certain practices which are helpful on the path, but they are not necessarily, they do not necessarily result in purification. They can be supports for it. So in summary, rites and rituals here, silabata, can include all kinds of spiritual practices and techniques and undertakings. It's not restricted to specific rituals like lighting candles, but the essential point here is the way in which we look at these rituals and the importance that we give them.
Okay, the second question of same person: how does one practice to realize anatta?
Anatta is, how does one practice to realize anatta?
Yes, Bhante. Yes.
Yeah. So anatta is not a thing to be experienced or to be realized. It's not an entity. So the word anatta is a tool that we use to look at the five khandhas, or to look at our experience. And the word anatta means no atta. So it's a refutation of the idea or the concept of atta. You may recall, or you may know, that of the four kinds of upadana or attachment, one, the most profound, is atuvadupatan, and it's not atupatan. So there's no attachment to atta, because there is no atta to attach to, but there is a concept of atta. So the Buddha is saying, well, what is this atta? Where is it? So anatta is a pointer. It's a finger pointing to the way things are. Now, one of the ways of reflecting on anatta is to look at the idea of ownership. So, ideas of atta are based upon power over, ownership of. So when we look at the five khandhas closely, we can see that there is no entity standing behind the body. There's no owner of the body. And the very simple proof of this is that we can't, through an act of will, tell our body, don't get sick, don't get old, don't die. Because the aging, the sickness, the death of the body proceeds according to causes and conditions. And whether we want it to happen or we don't, that's not really, has really no relevance. So we can talk about my body in the conventional way, but in truth, it's not our body. It's these are a collection of the elements which are arising and passing away moment by moment by causes and conditions. So the understanding of anatta is very much bound up with the reflection on causality, and whether it's the paticca samuppada or just the more general seeing, how any phenomena is constantly changing because all of its constituent parts and all its causes and conditions are impermanent. So we look at the five khandhas in this way, the feeling, and we say, oh, I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling unhappy, I feel indifferent. But these feelings have no owner. We cannot find an owner. If we could, then we would be able to say, let me just have happy feeling, let me have no unhappy feeling. But we can't. We have no power over feeling in that way. And perceptions are the same. We can't decide beforehand to have certain memories or not have them, or to perceive things in certain ways. The perception arises, passes away according to causes and conditions. Sankhara khandha, or the wholesome, unwholesome dhammas, similarly, these arise, pass away without any owner. And similarly with sense consciousness. So the investigation of anata is the investigation of causality. We understand the lack, the absence of self through observing the lack of an owner or an entity that stands behind the five khandhas and orders its affairs or tells them what to do. So the anatta is concealed for a number of reasons. One is that our language does not express anatta very well. And for ease of communication, we speak as if there was a self. And the Buddha did not criticize this, and he himself used the word self in this normal, everyday fashion on a number of occasions, famously when he said the self should be the refuge of the self. And the Buddha talked about past lives of being born in as a human being, as an animal, in many, many, many past lives. So the Buddha was happy to express himself in terms of a conventional self, because it's just easier to talk in that way. It's very difficult to communicate in a, to express in a way that expresses the truth of anatta. So the point is that we need to recognize this is a fiction. This is a convention that we have adopted to help us to speak with each other conveniently. But when we look more closely at our experience, we find there is no true foundation for it.
Okay, Pante. Same person, third question. Does one need jhana to be a stream enterer?
Jhana is the preferred way. We can say the royal way, and in the Eightfold Path, the Buddha, in every time that he explained the Eightfold Path, he always explained it in terms of the four rupa jhanas. Nevertheless, there are schools, Buddhist schools, or in the Vipassana tradition, let's say, who would argue that jhana is only necessary in a few seconds or mind moments prior to stream entry, That is to say, you can get almost up to the very gate of stream entry without jhana. But I would say that that the path of jhana is the path that the Buddha himself recommended. It has to be said that entering jhana is very difficult, and the danger is if meditators make too much out of jhana, it becomes a kind of craving, and it can become an attachment. And then if meditators are unable to realize jhana, then they become very discouraged, and sometimes even give up on meditation altogether. My own teacher, Ajahn Chah, would recommend the practice of meditation to go all the way, and that means to go through jhana and out the side of jhana to vipassana. But in the case where a meditator may feel that they just cannot break through into jhana, but that they can realize upachara samadhi, that is to say, very close to jhana, with the jhana factors present to one degree or another, and which the hindrances are no longer present, that one can develop the investigation of the three characteristics at that stage. So whatever the path of meditation, the bottom line is that the mind has to have left the five hindrances behind. But before the mind enters the first jhana, this stage where there is still some mental activity and the jhana factors are not so stable, it can be used as a foundation for vipassana, but it is nowhere near as strong a foundation as the same upachara stage, which appears after emerging from jhana. It has to be said that practicing investigation and vipassana in this pre-jhana stage can in itself result in jhana. And because at this stage of practice, your own plans and management is not always so effective. There is a kind of a momentum, and the mind has a path of its own. So Ajahn Chah himself, my teacher, would rarely speak in the technical terms of jhana and the different jhanas. His emphasis was more on being aware of the mental factors which are present in the mind, moment by moment, rather than saying, oh, I've got this mental factor, that meant this must be jhana, because that can be a hindrance or an obstacle. And there is quite a lot of disagreement, even amongst experienced meditation teachers, as to the nature of the four jhanas. It's not always so clear cut. So Ajahn Chah's advice, my advice for what it's worth, is being aware of how the mind is right now, and whether it has sufficient stability, clarity, joy in the mind that can sustain investigation of Dhamma. So you can, say, avoid this too much worry about jhana through this very close observation of the state of the mind moment by moment and its readiness for um, investigation of the three characteristics um, by looking closely at the five khandhas as they arise and pass away in the present moment. If the mind is not lacks sufficient stability and clarity um, and ease, then one returns to the original meditation object, the breath, for instance. But if the investigation can be sustained without losing the thread and being caught up in thinking, then one can proceed in that fashion.
Okay. Should someone with breathing difficulty, like in COVID, do anapanasati or other meditation type like metta or buddhanusati?
Um, I think it would depend on a number of factors. One, how experienced the meditator would be, but and how serious the symptoms of COVID and how serious the breathing difficulties are. So I'm not sure I could have a clear-cut answer to this question. But I think generally that it would be better to move away from the breath and use one of the other techniques that you just mentioned. Um, if there is a lot of fear and anxiety um, arising in the mind because of the breathing difficulties, then bringing the metta to bear on the breath itself. So making the breath an object of metta as a way of reducing fear and anxiety may also be a useful practice.
The last thought determines our next birth. So if someone who has done a lot of bad things in life and near his time of death, he realizes all his bad deeds and panic, then someone asks him to just let go and accept Jesus Christ, and he has a peace of mind after that. Would that mean he will go to a good place as his last thought is peaceful? Then what about the bad thing he had done? Does it mean he will reborn in a good place immediately after death, but only for a short while, and he has then go to where his karma takes him?
Yeah, the questions concerning karma are,
Yes,
are are very difficult to answer, and the Buddha himself said that thinking about this too much and make your head split into I don't know how many different
okay, but then
parts.
next.
So, but nevertheless, there are so many different factors involved, not only those that have um, occurred in the present life, but also in many lives in the past. Um, if someone has performed many evil acts or bad acts or selfish acts in this life, um, and towards the end of their life, they experience some genuine remorse and ask for forgiveness and try to turn their mind to wholesome things, then this is a very good karma, of course, and their destination after death will be better than if they had no realization, no remorse at all. But to what effect that mediates or mitigates the bad karma they've created before is impossible to tell. We don't. It's not a kind of like adding this and subtracting that. It is just so incredibly complex. If someone has a genuine remorse, it's not always the case that will therefore be present at the very last moment before death. There might be a resurgence of some memories of past unwholesome deeds, and yeah. So I'm not giving such a clear answer here. The point I'd like to make is it's incredibly complex, and we can't say what will happen as a result, other than that recognizing one's misdeeds and bad karma, trying to make amends, asking for forgiveness, turning the mind towards the good and the wholesome is the wisest and the best possible path to take. The details of how that would impact on the vipaka of the previous karma is not a sure thing.
Another question: how to forgive oneself who realized their own mistakes in the past and have peace with it?
Well, first of all, I think most people, when you get to my age, or you get a little bit older, are actually thankful for mistakes you've made, or at least see how in many ways they contributed to many of the good things that you feel proud of in your life. And it's almost impossible not to make mistakes and do foolish things. It's a question of how we deal with them afterwards, so we're honest enough to take responsibility for them and use them as lessons to prevent ourselves acting in those ways in the future. But we're not, you can say, it's not fair on yourself to take like an arahant standard and say that you should have been perfectly mindful and compassionate and good and kind and so on. And that's too much to expect of yourself in the past. And I think if we look at it again in terms of dhammas, rather than me, a person who did bad things, we can see that, let's say on a day or on an occasion where we acted foolishly or hurt somebody, or acted badly in some way or another, in terms of dhammas, we could say, well, on that particular day, there was only so much hiri ottappa, only so much conscious sense of shame and care and restraint and wisdom and mindfulness. So those wholesome dhammas were weak, whereas the unwholesome dhammas of greed, anger, selfishness, jealousy, and so on were strong. They've been fed and nurtured for many lifetimes. So when we look at it in terms of the causes and conditions for unwholesome actions in the past, and don't see it in terms of me and what a bad person I am and how could I have done that, but see, yeah, the problem was on that day, I lacked restraint, I lacked mindfulness, I lacked compassion, and I had too much or allowed these unwholesome dhammas to grow within me. And so when we look at the past in that way, then we're not filled with guilt in the same way. We say, yeah, therefore I must strive my best in the future to make sure I have those protection of hiri and otapa, and of intelligent, wise shame and fear of consequences. I need more mindfulness. I need more patience. I need more kindness. And these are all things that you can cultivate. I need less greed and less hatred, less delusion. Well, yeah, this is something we can work on. So this is how we forgive. Yeah, I just had this much mindfulness and that much heedlessness. And so when the heedlessness is stronger than the mindfulness, then do stupid things and say stupid things. But that doesn't mean that we are a bad person forever because of that. It's all a matter of which is at a particular moment, which is strongest, which comes out on top amongst the defilements and the virtues. And we have to work to gradually abandon the defilements and cultivate the virtues until the virtues are stronger than the defilements. So, sometimes you can even make a little, use your imagination to imagine yourself in the past when you did that stupid thing, that unwise thing. Imagine as like your younger brother or younger sister come with some flowers and incense and ask your forgiveness. And then you receive the flowers and incense from you 5 years ago or 10 years ago, wherever it was, and then you forgive you from the past. It's like your former self, or it's like your younger brother or sister. So this is a way you can use the power of imagination in a way that helps to create the kind of emotion that we want to cultivate. So the intellectual side is one side, but the emotional side also has to be developed in harness, in harmony with the intellectual understanding.
Can Bante explain can Bante explain what are the differences between awareness and mindfulness?
Well, mindfulness, it's a good idea when we are discussing Dhamma in English or any modern language, to try to relate the terms that we use to the Pali. These days, mindfulness has many related meanings, and particularly in the modern day, in the Western world, when there is a movement called secular mindfulness, in which the policy is to extract mindfulness from the context of the Eightfold Path and other Buddhist teachings, and teach it in what they call a non-religious way. But that means that there are so many different ideas of what mindfulness is, and the concept of mindfulness is very unclear these days, or the definition of it, let us say. But from Theravada Buddhist view, we can say mindfulness has two main functions. It is the function to bring to mind and to bear in mind. So to bring to mind means bringing information, bringing memories from the past to the present moment when necessary. For instance, we meet some kind of an issue, a problem in our daily life, and then we are mindful of occasions in the past where we met such a problem and were able to overcome it. So bringing those memory to bear upon a problem in the present moment is mindfulness. That's not sort of letting your mind go into the past. That's being mindful of memories which can be applied usefully to the present moment. Or in the event that one is practicing meditation, then we bear in mind or bring to mind the teachings, the advice of our teachers, and the cautions that we remember that are useful, and so on and so forth. So that's one function of sati, or mindfulness, as we understand it. The other is to bear in mind. That means to keep the mind on the object, not allowing it to slip away into indulgence in memory or imagination, and keeping the breath in mind, keeping the in-breath, keeping the out-breath in mind, is the other main meaning of mindfulness. So this in itself is a long. We could talk about this more, but let's leave it there and go on to awareness. Now, awareness is a word which doesn't have, I don't think, a clear Pali equivalent. And again, it's one of these, you'll observe with English language, it tends to be very precise about technical matters and material realities, but rather imprecise and ambiguous about non-material realities. So there's always some possibility of confusion in using these modern English words. Some of them have been borrowed from Christianity, for instance, and so have some of the Christian views embedded in them, which can lead to misunderstanding. Others taken from scientific works, and there again, there can be some confusion. So awareness, I think if we were to decide upon a Pali equivalent, in some cases, it might simply just be vijnana and sense consciousness. It can often be used in that way, generally in English language. The other meaning is akin to sampajanya, which we generally translate as clear comprehension, or sometimes a translation that I like myself is alertness. So that sense of clear comprehension going in the present moment. And in some cases, I think that would be probably close to the way that the word awareness is used sometimes. So summary awareness can be used to mean simply sense consciousness, or it can have a specific meaning of clear comprehension. But I think in many Western presentations, the meaning is not particularly clear at all.
Okay, Bante. Is it okay to keep moving, Bante?
Yeah.
Okay. Bante, if person have a dual faith, in that way, is it possible that person attain stream entry?
Sorry, what a dual faith,
Yes.
meaning
Meaning practicing this way and that way also.
in two different religions or two different
Yes, two different technique or two
religions.
different religions. Yes.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between two different religions and two different sort of meditation traditions, isn't there? Let me answer both of them. One of the on one occasion, the Buddha was asked whether members of other religions, other sects, could realize the Dhamma. And the Buddha said, if they embody the Eightfold Path, then they could. So it was a very, very skillful answer. And of the Eightfold Path, then I think the obvious obstacle for other religious traditions would be right view, and the teachings of the Buddha are not compatible with belief in a personal creator God, which is at the heart of many chief big religions, major religions in the world. But nevertheless, people who are members of other religions, sometimes they are able to interpret, reinterpret, or find a way of looking at their own teachings in a way that it doesn't conflict with Dhamma so much. But I would say that only if someone is fully convinced of the main principles of Dhamma, that there is suffering is due to defilements. Defilements can be abandoned through the Eightfold Path, and that there is no deity, no god or gods that are to be prayed to or to be supplicated, and that there's no external power that can provide liberation or salvation or whatever. So I don't know how an individual might be able to put the two together. I know that of course Mr. Goenka made a point of teaching in such a way that members of other religions could adopt his technique and make use of it without feeling that it threatened their beliefs. And I think that's a wonderful thing. But I don't think that myself that a non-Buddhist belief system could provide the foundation for stream entry. As far as different traditions and approaches within Buddhism itself, again, I think that's probably covered by the same point, that as long as there is the fundamentals of right view, and as long as the eightfold path is being followed in its entirety, not just some parts of it, then that would be legitimate and would provide the basis for stream entry.
Bhante. Bhante, uh, how faith towards Lord Buddha is important in our Dhamma practice?
Faith in the Lord Buddha.
Yes.
Well, the let me talk about faith in that in the major religions of the world, faith of course plays the central role, and we could say that they are in effect belief systems. In other religions, then basically the more faith you have, the better. There's no such thing as too much faith. Whereas in Theravada Buddhism, then faith is seen as a spiritual faculty, something to be developed, but also something to be developed within the context of an overall training with an understanding of its nature, of its advantages and disadvantages or dangers. The way that faith is presented in the suttas is usually within the group of dhammas which we call the five indriyas, or the five spiritual faculties, or the five palas or powers. So those five are faith or sattha, viriya, sati, samadhi, and panya. And the faith is, we are told, should always be balanced by wisdom. When faith is not balanced by wisdom, then it can very easily become superstition or else fanaticism. And this is something, of course, we can see throughout the world today. And the proof of faith that there's the sattha is now strong is that it leads to viriya, and it leads to viriya that leads to sati, samadhi, panya. So it is within the developmental process which lies at the heart of the Buddhist teachings. Now the two this is to abbreviate a little bit, let me say two main objects of faith. One of the Buddha's enlightenment, and secondly the law of karma. So these are indispensable. You know, you have to have these two, accept these two hypothesis, if you like, if you want to make any progress on the Buddha's path. So if the Buddha's enlightenment was not authentic, then the teachings would not stand up to the test of experience, and they would not lead to liberation. But the faith in the Buddha, or in the Buddha's enlightenment, is basically the faith in the human capacity or potential for enlightenment, because prior to enlightenment, the Buddha was a normal human being. And certainly he was a bodhisattva, and that he'd been accumulating virtues, accumulating paramis for many, many lifetimes. But he was nevertheless a human being at the time of his enlightenment. So we can refer to him perhaps as a representative of the human race, as someone who proved the potential for enlightenment So believing in the Buddha's enlightenment is, we can say, essentially a belief in the human capacity for enlightenment. And the next step that we take from that is that therefore we believe in our own potential for enlightenment. And if our basic faith is reduced to this or expanded to this, really, we can see that we have no choice but to make our best effort to abandon the unwholesome, develop the wholesome, and purify the mind. Because if we're at the heart of our identity as a Buddhist, is our belief in our inherent capacity for cultivation and for realization of Dhamma, then we should make our best effort to put that to the test and see whether or in fact it is true. So this is why sattha leads to virya. And when with that kind of virya or effort, then mindfulness, samadhi, and panya will develop. So this is the importance of faith. And with the faith in karma, is that things arise, pass away, develop, or decline, all due to causes and conditions, and that we make our life, we make our future through the quality of our actions of body, speech, and mind. There's not some deity in the skies who will bestow blessings on us and help us to be happy and wise. It's something that we have to create the causes and conditions ourselves. So the recollection of the Buddha is a practice that can bring great joy and uplift to the mind. We feel, I think, I'm sure all of us who have been studying and practicing the Dhamma would feel so profound inspiration and gratitude to the Lord Buddha. And by reading suttas and listening to suttas, then we build up like a database, let's say, of wise, profound, compassionate teachings of the Lord Buddha. And then turning our mind to them can fill us with inspiration and lead us to make effort, particularly if we're feeling a bit stale. If you've been on a meditation retreat for a long time, sometimes you can get a bit stale, and it's good just to put down your usual meditation object and turn your mind to one of the devotional reflections in order to bring up this joy in the heart and gratitude and uplift. And we can reflect on the Buddha's purity of heart, or his wisdom, or his compassion, and think of various examples that we have read or listened to. And this can bring up pamoja and gladness in the mind, which can still the hindrances and lead on to samadhi. Yes, so I think that, yes, the other point would be that in a more systematic approach, one may use the Itipiso chant and to reflect on each word, Bhagava Arahang Sama Samputo Vicha Charana Sampano Sukato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purisa Dhammasarati Satateva Manusana, and go and use that as a framework for recollecting the virtues of the Buddha. On one occasion, the Buddha said that if we are suffering from great fear for any reason, then recollecting the Buddha will help to reduce or eliminate that fear, and gave an analogy of an army looking at the banner of the commander-in-chief, or the flag, just being full with inspiration and overcoming, soldiers overcoming their fear when they see the banner. So that's one, to reflections of the Buddha as Buddhanusati, as a meditation object, reduces, eliminates fear, brings up energy and inspiration and joy into the mind. The recollection of the Buddha's enlightenment and what it means for our own life as Buddhists is a very good means of bringing energy into the practice if we're getting a little bit sloppy or lazy or discouraged.
Is it okay, Bhante, to take more?
Yes, let's go to 7:30 your time. Yeah.
Okay, Bhante. Okay. Bhante, how to recognize the process of becoming?
Process of becoming.
Yes, Bhante.
Yeah, well, we can again. I mean, life is becoming, we could say. So it's just calming your mind and stabilizing your awareness and looking within, and you can see for yourself. But becoming on a more general level, we can see in terms of the cravings in our minds. So there's three kinds of craving: kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha. So bhava tanha, kama tanha, is a desire for sense pleasures through eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and so on. Bhava tanha is that desire to be. It's being and becoming. So to be loved, to be respected, to be famous, to be known, to be seen, to be feared. So it's ideas about being something in the world, being something, measuring yourself against others, and wanting to create some realm of being, some permanent realm of being, to be happy, and to be permanently happy, or to be permanently this or permanently that. But as I say, where we can see it very, very clearly is these desires to be loved, respected, famous, or maybe to be overlooked and to be invisible to others. There are all kinds of things that we would like to be, but it's this idea of practicing in order to get something and hold on to it forever, to find love, to find the perfect partner and this wonderful love, and just to dwell in that love forever. So this idea of creating something, realizing something that lasts, and that somehow that would take away all one's suffering, that's the fallacy, and which doesn't stand up to, of course, to any investigation. So these are bhava. We can look at it in terms of the the craving to be or to become, but also it is the realm itself. Through our desires, we create a kind of a realm in which we live. You can see this with people who is very very suspicious people, are very greedy themselves and assume everyone else is greedy. And then they live in a world where they distrust everybody, and everybody's out for their own ends, and you can't trust anybody. And some people live in that world, don't they, where they just look on everybody as if they're out to rob them, to steal them, to cheat them. And that's their realm, that's their bhava that they're living in, and they crave to live in that. That's the world they've created, and they want to sustain. And then maybe somebody can create a world of kindness, and that's a more skillful kind of bhava. The problem is, as they say, this craving for it to be like this and to be like this for forever, and to give us certain kind of feelings that we want and protect us against other feelings that we don't want. And this is what spins us around in samsara.
There's another question. Bhante, how we can spread peace and Buddha's teaching in today's global crisis situation?
Sorry, I missed that. How to spread peace?
How to
Sorry,
spread?
could you
Yeah. Bhante, how we can spread peace and Buddha's teaching in today's global crisis situation?
Well, we live in different worlds. So there's the world that we experience through our screens, through news and social media and so on. But that's not a real world that can be experienced. So our real world is the world of our relationships and the people around us. So this is the world in which we participate directly, and in which we can have some effect. So if we start off with our own world, the world of our family, our friends, our colleagues, our acquaintances, and try to be as good an influence on those people directly around us. Once we get into that, like the whole world, or even just all of India, or cities, even Delhi, Mumbai, and so on, then it's too much, and we can just feel, oh, what can I do? One small person, I can't really do anything very much at all. But if we take the people that we live with, and the people that we converse with every day, and with whom we have relationships, then we can embody within ourselves peace. And this is not beyond this. It's not spreading Buddha's teaching is not so much about giving people sermons and wise advice, as much as embodying the teachings in our own life. And people say, oh, that with all this stress and difficulty, that person just can stay so calm. It's really inspiring. I wonder how they do that. And then somebody said, how is it you stay so calm and centered and free of anxiety and in the midst of all this that's going on? So, well, I study the Buddha's teachings, I practice the Buddha's teachings. Say I'm not particularly advanced student, but it's certainly made big difference to me. And so you're not wanting to be a missionary or anything, but if people see the way that you are benefiting from the Buddha's teachings, and they ask you, then you can share with them. So I think it's a matter of being exemplars of someone who's kind and generous, moral, and someone who is mindful, wise, and these all these good qualities that we are cultivating and developing, and we are expressing them. And there's so many people who talk well and are very articulate and convincing, but their own lives don't measure up to what they teach other people. And so their words don't have much weight. But even if you're not very articulate, you don't speak very well, but you live the Dhamma, then that's a wonderful way of spreading the Buddha's teachings, spreading peace.
Unmute kara. देखो.
Good evening, Bante.
Good evening.
It's very rare opportunity to see you. I have so many questions, but I want to ask this, that Bante, I'm facing this dilemma that to contribute more in the conventional world, or getting ordained, but my perception has been formed such that monk is limited in a way that he can contribute to the world, but it seems that lay person contribution seems more real. Now I know that there is a flaw in my view, but I'm not able to see through it. So I would really like if you could shed some light on this.
Yes, well, the Buddhist idea of society is that we have four groups of people working together in harmony. So there is the monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen. We all have different roles to play, and some people, it's usually quite a small number of people, are suited to contribute as monks and nuns. The majority of people are more suited and have gifts and skills and so on that are maybe more suitable to contributing as lay Buddhists. I would say that as a monk, then I've never felt constrained. I feel like it's my analogy would be like plugging into the internet. It's like you've just suddenly got a library of millions and millions of books at your fingertips. So much information, so much power, if you like, and then power of information at least. Mm-hmm. And in the becoming a member of the Sangha, it's not just becoming a member of a particular monastery or monastic tradition, but you are becoming a member of an organization which is it's the most ancient functioning organization, and it's 2,500 more years age, and it is an organization, a society which was created specifically by the Lord Buddha for people who are totally committed to the Eightfold Path. So the rules, the regulations, the conventions, and so on were designed by the Buddha himself to maximize the supportive conditions and minimize the obstructive conditions for the path to Nibbana. So I for myself, I find just a wonderful opportunity, and just feel so grateful to be able to live this life, and to be able to live a life which is the details, the parameters of which were designed by the Buddha himself. I mean, just incredible feeling. But so I was saying, one of the important things is to be able to practice what you preach, and to be an example of Dhamma. And I would say that as a monk, one has an opportunity to reach people that very few lay Buddhists would ever gain. I mean, you could have some very exceptional lay Buddhists with great charisma, and for one reason or another, able to do a lot, and writing books and so on. But as a monk, even monks who are not particularly gifted in that way, they can contribute to the longevity of the sasana. And as I mentioned, this form is one in which the Buddha himself created in order to provide as much as many supportive conditions as possible for the path to Nibbana. And I would suggest, I mean, of course, I have no figures here, but I would think of the Aryapugalas that have appeared in the world in the last 2,500 years. I would guess maybe 90% of them have been monastics. And so this is the organization which has nurtured, most of the greatest human beings that have ever lived in the world. And without the Sangha, then Buddhism tends to very soon get corrupted by other teachings, and in the lay world that there are all kinds of compromises made, and you get a lot of deviation from the true Dhamma. But the Sangha has always been the organization which has maintained and sustained the purity of the teachings, but also it is the preferred environment for noble beings to live in. So if you were to look at the influence of my teacher, Ajahn Chah, over the past 40 years, I think it's quite remarkable, considering that, first of all, he had almost no formal education. He only left, he traveled out of Thailand 2 times in his life, once to England and France, and the second time he went to England and America and Canada. But in total, he left his country to spread the Dhamma in the West for a period of maybe 2 months or 4 months, something like that, out of his whole lifetime. And yet his influence on Buddhism throughout the world is quite remarkable. So in terms of promoting Buddhist values and Buddhist practices, I can't see ways in which I certainly am speaking personally that I'm hindered by being a monk. In fact, I feel they're much enhanced by being a monk. But there are also many other ways to contribute towards creating and sustaining a Buddhist culture which are not open to monks. And in that case, in those areas, there's a kind of a sharing of responsibility. So, well, the monks don't get involved in it, and the lay Buddhists do those things. So we share these responsibilities for spreading the Dhamma.
Okay, thank you. Bante, one last question. Any book recommendation for knowing monastic life more better?
Books to read. Sorry,
To,
can you repeat?
to know more about monastic life.
Well, you can read or listen to the book I wrote about Ajahn Chah and his life and teaching called Stillness Flowing.
Okay.
It's a very big book, but you can download the audio version for free if you just. I think Deepak probably has the link that he could send to anyone who wants it. But it's a book, as I say, it's a biography of Ajahn Chah, but I used this as a means to introduce the main principles of monastic life. And there's many examples of life as a monk in the forest in northeast Thailand, and the whole the way of life of monks and the principles supporting it. So I would suggest downloading that audiobook. It's free download it's a Dhammadana download, and I think you find a lot of useful information, uplifting information in that.
Okay, thank you. Sad, sad, sad.
Bante, now time is up. I think
Yes.
there are many questions,
Okay.
but we are going to stop here, Bante.
Okay.
I'm going to stop recording.